Good Monday. This is Jay Brew, co-chairman of Seafried and Brew. Well, we had a change from patience in last week's Fed meeting, and moving now to the Fed wanting to be reasonably confident in terms of raising interest rates. So when we think about it, it's like a puzzle. We need to look at all of the different pieces that the Fed are looking at. We've looked at different pieces such as participation rate. And when we look at it based upon Yellen's, after the meeting, talk to journalists, that she raised 4 different points that would move them towards that reasonably confident. The first one, of course, is the unemployment rate. And what they said, the change now looking at 5% to 5.2%, but now connecting it to having more wage inflation. That not only looking at it in terms of the Fed view of full employment, but full employment, and that will cause more wage inflation. Because when they look at core inflation, that once again it's been running below that 2% area that they would like to see. Now this excludes food and energy. But we can see that there's been downward movements in terms of that core rate, and they want to see that turning back up and moving towards that 2% level. So wage inflation, core inflation. But what is troubling them is that wage growth that we've talked about in previous webcasts. Comparably to where it was in the past, is that it's basically moved down and flatlined. And they'd like to see that starting to move up, which of course would also correspond with a move up in that core inflation rate. Finally, what they're looking at is future inflation in terms of looking at the difference between the 5-year Treasury and 5-year tips. And what they'd like to see is that moving up closer to that 2% rate. And of course, there's been a downward move in that as we've seen treasuries moving down. In comparison, we've talked about compared to foreign rates, the low inflation expectations, they want to see that moving up closer to 2%. So we got from Yellen a number of different puzzle pieces. But let's talk about another puzzle. As you know, I love to travel around the United States and find interesting things. And where I was last weekend was at a stave puzzle session at a hotel in the Adirondacks of New York called The Point. And when we were there, we got to meet Jennifer from Stave Puzzles, as well as her puzzler husband Rick, and we got to put together some very interesting puzzles. For instance, in their Circus City, these puzzles can actually be done 2 different ways, and they still all fit together. But the other thing that's interesting about stave puzzles is that they are all handmade out of wood. And we learned that this business began with 2 people and now has multiplied to 24 people being employed by Stave Puzzles. And that in itself is incredible as a small business here in America in terms of growing a small business that is thriving and doing something that's very interesting. Like this particular loon puzzle, which once again has to all interfit with all those tiny loons. If one looks, there's even a shark in here. So it's really fascinating to do these puzzles. It was fascinating to be involved with knowing how they're made and what a wonderful place America is. So we give you the website for Stave Puzzles. It's incredible to go on there, incredible to put them together. And once again, we have them all fit into a clear piece that would say with reasonable confidence that the Fed could raise rates into the future. This is Jay Brew, co-chairman of Seafried and Brew. Have a great week.